So happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another discovery session with Efficiency Canada and friends. I'm Natalie Irwin, Director of Stakeholder Engagement here at Efficiency Canada. Before we started today, I actually just wanted to take this opportunity to say that I appreciate that a lot of the country has been or is going into lockdowns at the moment. And so while this isn't the first time for a lot of us, and we know we're going to be okay, but it's also okay to not be okay, and it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated, and these feelings are completely normal. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, please reach out to someone, join or make family or friends Zoom calls. Be sure to make connections with people. One of the things I love most about the energy efficiency sector is that we're here to support each other. So please never hesitate to reach out. You guys all have my personal email address. I'm happy to connect with anyone and anyone at any time. I just wanted to say that it's okay and we will get through this. So before we get started, a reminder to everyone that our guest speaker today is going to present for approximately 20 minutes before we open the floor to our question and answer period. There's two ways to ask questions. One, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. You can ask your own question. The second way is at the bottom of the Zoom presentation. There's a Q&A box and you can type your question in there, and essentially I can narrate your question on your behalf. And so please wait until the end to ask your questions. You can type in the box throughout, but we won't get to them until the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our two presenters here today, Juliana Dutkay and Akua Schatz from the Canadian Green Building Council, who have been working for the last year on Workforce 2030, which is Canada's first and only coalition supporting low carbon workforce development across the building industry, unions, and education providers. Our guest speakers will provide an overview on this project with highlights. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Natalie. Well, welcome everyone. We're thrilled to be here. I'm Akua, and Juliana and myself will be sharing the presentation today. So we're going to take you through a little bit about the, we'll get deep dive into the actual coalition itself, which is running in Ontario, but we'll also provide you with a bit of a framing of why this is important and what types of activities are emerging in other parts of the country as well too. So we'll just get right into it and move to the next slide, Juliana. Thanks. So just a quick overview. The Canada Green Building Council, we're just a national industry association. We have membership from across the country. This includes about 1,100 corporate members, and that is a representative of more or less the full supply chain of the green building sector. Engineering firms, architects, labor unions, educators, government, owners, lenders. And our work really focuses on driving and scaling up the green building sector, especially as it relates to climate change. We develop green building standards. We do education and training, market research, and government relations. And we engage a lot in partnerships and coalition building to advance some of this work. So this is one key example of that we'll explore today. All right, we'll move ahead. Just there's a, would you mind? Yeah, great. A little bit of a delay on the slides. So just overall, when you're looking at the need for a workforce-related coalition, there's a couple of things that, you know, when I think about it, especially today, that makes sense. When we're talking about some of the bigger investments that we need to make in our buildings, that we know that are to address climate change, we know our building sector is going to have a particular role in this, and in fact, the majority of a lot of our emissions are going to be tied back to improvements that we make to our buildings. This is increasingly so when we saw the announcements yesterday to increase our targets for emission reductions, because the vast majority of emission reduction potential exists in our building sector. we've seen, and I don't know if you've all been following, number of commitments to lending and supporting retrofits through some significant government initiatives. Just in retrofits in particular, we're looking at 33.6 billion. We had an additional 4.4 billion committed to homes in this recent budget. And this leads us to a recognition that we know our workforce has to pretty much triple between now and 2030 to actually generate those the lower emission targets of 30%. So how are we going to do that? Move ahead to the next slide. We know that while we're going to see this massive increase or need for a much bigger workforce, that we're still actually struggling currently. New entrants, we will see a significant need for new entrants into the marketplace. And this is more or less the general construction field. And we're going to have to address some of the retirements that are happening. Often folks, when we're looking at the construction sector, talk about the graying out of the construction sector. And so trying to find ways to not only replace those who have who are leaving, but increase the number and skills associated with that. So if we move to the next slide, the conventional building sector still has an enormous role to play in this workforce expansion, but there are particular skills and expertise that are going to be needed in order to meet those emission targets. And this is just a good summary of that. So it tries to capture some of the key elements that are adjusted when you're working on more of a high performance building. Where building envelope and thermal bridges become critically important, where commissioning is and understanding and optimizing how your systems are working is all that more critical. Geothermal heat pumps and photovoltaic systems for some of those alternative energy sources require particular skill sets to not only install but operate. If we move ahead to the next slide, this is also an element that comes out quite strongly when you're thinking about high performance buildings, the interactivity among various professionals becomes increasingly more important. So this is an example of a wall assembly where just the tradespeople included would be bricklayers, carpenters, cement masons, drywall mechanics, electricians, and plumbers. And that's not necessarily just not even including the design aspects from at the earlier stages. So what is critical is that each one knows what their role is in order to preserve the integrity of that envelope and maintain the energy efficiency of it. And we move ahead then to the next slide. So that led us to really the development of something called the Workforce 2030. And I'll hand it over to Juliana to walk us through some of the reasons not only for this and how we approached it, but the work that it's doing on the ground.
Thank you very much, Akua. I'm Juliana Dutkay, and I've been working with Canada Green Building Council over the last 18 months on shaping and managing this work. So Workforce 2030 is a coalition that basically emerged from a need identified through the previous research and through the market context that Akua referenced, and it looks to fast track the workforce to build a low carbon Ontario. Although this work has been started here in Ontario and the GTHA in particular, there's lots of relevance to it nationwide. The coalition looks to cut across silos and really mobilize the entire ecosystem associated with the design and construction and education sector, and really reach across functions and roles from developers and owners to the design professionals, the builders, officials, and managers and occupants. We formally launched in July last year after extensive consultations and engagement with a focus on 3 areas of work that look to tackle skills development. So how can we accelerate the development of the skills needed to build in alignment with our carbon targets and develop and upgrade existing curriculum? How do we recruit talent so that we champion inclusive practices and we reach into underrepresented groups to address current labor shortages and generate opportunity? And workplace innovation, building on the need to work in a more integrative manner, from integrated design processes to collaboration and to designing and constructing in alignment with new technologies. Right now, the coalition includes about 50 organizations that are playing various roles. So there's sort of 3 ways that organizations are part of the coalition. There's funders. We rely on the support and contribution of the Atmospheric Fund, who's the organization that seed funded this idea and really co-developed the concept. Ivy Foundation and Donnelly Foundation that are supporting our advocacy work. And recent support from the Future Skills Center directed at a particular project that's focused on skills development. The foundational partners are a range of 15 organizations that we carefully kind of curated to represent and include a diverse range of voices, organizations that were willing to roll up their sleeves and really participate in developing the idea and guiding the structure and the work that we'll do together. And the broad range of participants and supporters, from manufacturers to builders to universities, associations, education and training providers that saw value in this work and kind of wanted to support the broader mission and be part of a collective effort. The principles and commitment are the basis for joining the coalition. As we look at employers, educators, and practitioners, which are a very diverse type of organization, we looked to develop a commitment that would be representative of that breadth and would be a sort of a first step to participate. So what joining the coalition really means is a minimum of 3 things: lending your voice, contributing to the collective work, either through time or through funds, and building up workforce readiness. This means looking internally at own organizations and developing programs or enhancing efforts to accelerate kind of your own workforce development. The key principles at the basis of the coalition are, inclusivity. We welcomed organizations across the board, ranging really from, very grassroots advocates to some of the more traditional associations. We really need kind of everybody at the table and all hands on deck, so to speak. Collaborative, welcoming ideas and identifying shared priorities in a collaborative process. Accountable for the things that we say we do and the outcomes we seek, and equitable across different backgrounds, and welcoming of a diverse contribution from organizations. In terms of the operational structure, Canada Green Building Council is playing the role of secretariat. It's really the backbone function of driving the strategy, coordinating participation, and mobilizing resources needed for this work. The foundational partners I mentioned earlier represent the advisory board. Each organization has a senior representative on this body, and its mandate is to help set priorities, provide expert advice, and really help grow the coalition by mobilizing their own networks and influence. And then the working groups is really where the more tactical work happens with the leadership from foundational partners and participating organizations that identify similar challenges. This is the area of project development and delivery. That's where we'll be looking to develop multilateral partnerships and design projects and implement. Right now, there's 4 working groups that really lead the following areas of work that I'm going to dive into shortly. Now, one of the things that we have done over the past 12 months, it's, there's the plan and there's reality, and then there's pivoting your plan according to what happens. And one of the things that has developed quite rapidly is the opportunity to influence policy and investment at a government level. So advocacy became a big part of our work over the last months, both at the provincial and the federal level. With provincially looking to influence and support investment into worker upskilling and reemployment for energy efficient retrofits in particular, as well as low carbon construction. There's lots of people that have been impacted by this pandemic, and with a sector that's kind of geared for growth and needs qualified workers, this is the moment to have that rapid upscaling and transfer and transitioning the workforce into the sector. And federally, we have been supporting the connection between the climate and the workforce agendas across programs and across government departments and policies, and really emphasizing the important role that the building sector can play for creating good jobs and reducing emissions at the same time. In terms of projects that are led by the working group level, there's 3 that I'd like to emphasize for our discussion today. One has been recently announced with the support of Future Skills Center. It's a project to accelerate transition of workers impacted by the pandemic, especially the ones from marginalized communities that underrepresented in the building sector, into green building work, with a particular focus on the trades and building operations. This means 8 partners are working together to introduce a carbon lens to existing training, as well as develop new modules to match construction employment opportunities with the trainees going through these programs. And is really based on partnership among community, education, and labor organizations, as well as private sector employers. Some of the organizations that you see on the screen are leading this work, with Canada Green Building and Council playing the lead role, and then Labor Education Center, Community Benefits, Toronto Community Benefits Network, Building Up, and Mohawk College being the education providers, and with the support of BOMA and Daniels to provide that connection and opportunity with on-the-ground projects. Building Canada's retrofit workforce is a project in development that we're looking to secure support for, and is really looking to tackle the implementation side of these new investment programs that have been rolled out. Now that demand is in place and is, we can have a predictability of that demand, the workforce needs to gear up for it in order to implement. So this work is really focused on augmenting the labor intelligence to realize precisely, what we need in terms of skills and size. Develop action plans of key professions that are key to retrofits. And then with support of partners, focus on curriculum development and upskilling to really introduce content in existing programs for new entrants as well as existing professionals. And lastly, a project that we've been working with architects, engineers, as well as the Carpenters Union in particular, is the Workforce Readiness Roadmaps. This is a project designed to build on existing research with a much more applied intention of developing roadmaps that are occupation specific to inform workforce planning with the leadership of industry and the ownership of industry. We know that these plans and recommendations will only be implemented if employers and industry is not only at the table, but actually takes ownership of that process. So that is the purpose of this work of roadmap development. To give you a sense of our sort of the span of our project and what we hope to happen next, from planning to the iterative coalition building and the sort of early activation that we've done last year, the launch in July, moving into now a full activation with ongoing projects and really looking to broaden the tent of the coalition, as well as look towards national expansion. I'll let Akua wrap up with a note on that national ambition.
Thanks, Juliana. So what we're noting is that this isn't an issue that's just exclusive to Ontario. There are emerging areas, this type of approach, a more coalition or collaborative approach to address some of the skills challenges is emerging across the country. And there are other initiatives that are, and organizations that may be leading some of this. In Nova Scotia, the Clean Foundation is exploring some of the opportunities for collaboration around workforce and skills development. In British Columbia, there are existing networks through the STEP Code subcommittee for training and capacity building. And Alberta Eco Canada is starting to do a little bit more work there with our support and partnership around partnership development for skills building. But what we're noting is that there is an increased need for this more coordinated approach, collaborative approach that can then also inform one another from a national perspective. And we hope to be able to continue to support other actors and work with others across the country to ensure that we have more, that we are able to deliver on our climate objectives. And ensure that we can do this in a pretty quick way, because the pressures are now on to deliver on those building improvements and new construction for low carbon. So I think that puts us pretty much on time for that, and we're seeing a bunch of different pieces come in. Nat, I'll just let you sort of tell us what to do and what to answer.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, it was definitely a great presentation, a lot of insights and a lot of tidbits. I was ferociously taking notes there. The good thing is that we actually record all these sessions, and so they will be posted on our website. We usually get them up about mid to the end of the following week, just for if anyone missed anything like myself and wants to watch it again. So before we open the floor to questions, again, there are two ways to ask questions. One, raise your hand and I can unmute you. The second way, I see people are already populating the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So I can get started on asking questions. There is a rule that we have for our presenters as well as everyone asking questions, and that is no sales pitches, please. Let's keep it to questions. So first question here is, I'm going to go with the one from actually Zaina. She had a few questions or comments, but Akua, you touched on this a little bit at the end, but I just, in case anyone missed it as well, are all these opportunities only available in Ontario?
So no, they're not necessarily all available in Ontario. The Workforce 2030 model is the most advanced in the Ontario context, and that is the approach that we've taken there. It has, I would say, unlike some other areas where maybe it's led by government, this is more of an industry or market-based coalition. But I would, it depends on where you're living, and so if you have an interest in advancing this type of work, there is increasingly a need to put attention on this and to connect the opportunities around jobs and skills development with the low carbon construction opportunities.
Thank you for that. And then a question from Jason is, does this strategy have a plan for upskilling the workforce for part-time, for I think it's part/single family homes? How are your goals transferable to that sector?
Juliana, do you want to just talk about how you prioritize things, or how you guys determine as a coalition what you focus on?
Yes, sure. So it's participants in the coalition represent a variety of kind of segments of the market. Organizations like Rescon, they're in the residential, new building, Ontario General Contractors, they're more focused on the commercial space. So there's a variety of organizations playing at kind of all segments of the market. From a Canada Green Building Council perspective, the ICI, the institutional commercial space, it's a more familiar segment, and where we see a lot of investment and opportunity. There's also an intention to be complementary to existing efforts. Organizations like CHBA, for example, focus a lot on the home retrofit space. So with some of the work of the coalition, we look to be complementary to that rather than replicate it. In terms of some of the project-specific work, I'd say that with the rapid upskilling project, a lot of the partners in that project have segments of their work that are very much about home retrofits, building up, for example. The model of their education is a mix of in-class and on-the-job learning. So a lot of the on-the-job learning happens, with home retrofits. So very much at the residential segment. So I'd say it's really looking both from an advocacy space, an advocacy priority at lifting the entire market, so to speak, in terms of workforce development, and then with project specificity, kind of tapping into each of the partners and their capability to deliver on projects.
Perfect. And then speaking of partners, I saw that there was a question here from Joshua who had one about one of your stakeholder or steering committee. We actually had, so this us being Efficiency Canada actually had Eco Canada. So Jeannie Peters came on the other week to present on their workforce analysis that they created. So are you aware of their workforce results? And if so, are you working together at all? Or can you comment to how the workforce outcomes overlap or mesh?
Yeah, absolutely. Eco Canada is one of the foundational partners of the Workforce 2030 Coalition, along with Efficiency Canada and others. So a very, very close collaboration when it comes to the research portion. Recognizing Eco Canada's mandate goes beyond buildings, so it doesn't have the sectoral specificity that our convening effort has, but yes, absolutely, we know of it and closely working together.
That's great. I know as a fellow nonprofit or charity organization, we like to pool our resources together so we don't duplicate efforts. We have to be thrifty with our research and our budget for sure. So more hands and more brains make lighter work for sure, and better and faster results. There's a question here actually from Pamela is, would interested stakeholders in other provinces work with CAGBC and Workforce 2030 to expand your efforts in other provinces? Or is there expectation that Workforce 2030 will always be Ontario focused?
No, we'd love to see this across the country, and that those are our discussions that are underway with a number of provinces. So I'd say, and this is kudos to Juliana and the team, they've made incredible inroads in less than a year, and in that time too, there's been interest from other provinces as well to apply this similar approach. So we, if you are interested, if you're part of a province or local government that you see a need for a more coordinated approach, then we'd be happy to chat further and share that.
That's great. And also you guys have your contact details on the last slide there, as well as if anyone missed that again, feel free to reach out to us at info@efficiencycanada.org, and we're happy to connect your organizations together. Speaking of partnerships, David actually has a question specific to Ontario about training incentives with the IESO and Enbridge. Are they offered, or I will open that up to you guys if there are other training incentives offered for any of your training and education at CAGBC across Canada?
The connection directly with the savings by design, not directly. I think through the Workforce 2030 work, and the FSC project, there is support for engaging and supporting students to come through the program. The programs that will be upgraded with low carbon content. We are looking carefully though at the federal budget results that came out and have really spelled out a number of significant investments in workforce upskilling and training. We just want to make sure that that includes a low carbon lens too. So that'll be the focus for us. So we'll be looking to see how those can apply to all of, not only say HBC, but all the various partners, unions, educators that deliver training on for the construction sector, and in particular on low carbon skills development.
Great, thank you. And I will also add that we add on Efficiency Canada's website, we have a training list of just all organizations. It's something we started at the beginning of the pandemic, just to say what online training is available. And if there's any ever discounts, we post them there or have links to various websites that go out. So including the Green Building Council. A question here actually from Zaina is, what are the 10 key professions that you looked at?
Now, which one is that? Oh, go ahead. Is that for that's for the retrofit project, Juliana? The retrofit initiative, I think they're speaking to, the one that is still in the proposal development stage.
Yeah, so there's a few ways that we thought about the prioritization in the context of roadmaps. And with the working group, we've been, discussing as to what would be the most effective approach. One is to, we've identified 3 technologies that are priority in terms of subsequently looking at occupations. And those technologies were related to building envelope and air tightness, to electrification of heating, and to new materials for new construction, that would be mass timber. So those 3 technologies were kind of one lens to this work. The other lens has been more of an occupational lens, and also a mix of that and the willingness of partners to begin drafting some of these frameworks. So we've been looking at carpentry occupation, and in a combination of effort between Athabasca University, Ryerson, and Canada Green Building Council at the architecture and engineering professions, with a subsequent step to identify, which subset of engineers and which subset of architect professionals, practitioners would be key. I'd say though that the common skills gaps that were mentioned a little earlier in terms of the air tightness, the plumbing and pipe fitting, geothermal insulation, and so on. That is really the basis for informing all this work. So that's a bit of a long answer, but all to say that this is in development for once, so we haven't really started this work, but it is based on those common skills gaps, as well as the willingness of partners and participants to take on some of this work and really move it forward. So very excited that the engineers and the 2 universities, along with the carpenters, Insulators 95, it's another union that really is very relevant to these skills gaps results here. So hoping to work with them soon on this as well.
Perfect. And I'm actually curious, what can our listeners or audience members do today or in the future to help share the information that they learned on this webinar? And also, is there anyone in particular that you think it would be great if they saw these details?
Absolutely. Go to the site and join the coalition. That will be it's a way to really contribute your voice and kind of coalescing all these champions for the sector and for low carbon buildings. Follow our Twitter and our LinkedIn channels at Workforce 2030. so that you have a sense of, you know, what we're working on together, and help amplify some of the advocacy pieces in particular at key moments where we're really trying to, you know, influence big decisions like new policies being developed, or you know, budgets being launched, and recommendation windows that are being open. So all that is extremely helpful. And then, as if you're interested to contribute more or have a particular interest, the working groups themselves would be sort of the third way to become involved. Like I said, the ones that we have developed to date based on this shared interest dive into mass timber capacity, the road mapping effort, and the rapid upscaling project for transitioning COVID impacted workers into low carbon buildings. And fingers crossed for the retrofits piece to be, to be funded and supported soon, because that would be, just amplifying our work on a whole new level, and provide a lot of opportunities for participation, and very practical kind of work that we hope to see coming out of that.
And Akua, that was a lot.
Yeah.
It was very thorough, but I don't know, Akua, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Like about how to get more involved, or just any maybe ask me the question again so I can.
It was my own question. I
Yeah,
deleted it
sure.
after I asked it. But is there anything that you wish the listeners could do to get involved? Juliana kind of spoke to that, but is there anyone in particular that you wish that if anyone has any connections that they could share this information with?
Well, I think what's happening also in the chat is there's some, contributions around and discussions around fenestration and so forth. Like this is where, this is the sort of the higher level framework of collaboration. And then the real juicy stuff is in the details. And so that's where you see some of the, the working groups being able to tackle some of those in particular challenges and opportunities. So I'd encourage, echo what Juliana said, and encourage folks to get involved in that way, because then you can take it down to that level, and those practical examples, real life examples, and real opportunities to work through those issues and advance the market is really the raison d'etre for building these types of things. We hope to see you at the table.
Perfect, thank you. And on that note, I'm going to actually end there for this week. So next week, I hope everyone joins me again. I'm actually going to be joined by Sustainable Buildings Canada, as well as someone from the Office for Sustainability and Energy Management from the University of Toronto. That session is going to start with a brief overview on Sustainable Building Canada's summer boot camp for graduate students that focuses on high performance buildings. So a great segue from this week's to next week's. 2020 was actually the first year for the program in which 35 students that looked at the basics of designing for high performance, including through a hands-on design charrette, focusing on the University of Toronto's new data science building. And then the remainder of the session is going to dig a little deeper into the university's plans to decarbonize the downtown campus through a series of aggressive zero carbon initiatives. So again, another great session after today's great session. These are always so informative. It's great to there's so much being done about energy efficiency and low carbon economy sector across Canada. It's always great to see what's going on and get little snippets into it. And if you want any more details, feel free to reach out to any of our listeners or viewers. And then as well, we post the recordings on our website, so you can check them out there. It's a great thing to do, especially if you're in lockdown, just listen to them and become more educated on what's going on across Canada. Lots happening there. Thanks to everyone for coming today, and thank you especially to Akua and Juliana for your fantastic presentation and some insights here. I look forward to rewatching the recording. Thanks everyone, and have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.